Welcome to the Spirit of Mayflower podcast. "2020 is a very special year for the Midlands, as it celebrates 400 years since the Separatists left the region aboard the famous ship the Mayflower, seeking religious freedom and a new life in the New World, America. Join me, Rachel Carter, recounting the story of my recent Atlantic crossing on board a 1,000-foot cargo ship, and Wyn and Ella Pritchard of Highcliffe Music, who you will hear throughout the podcast episode, playing the parts of Pilgrims William Bradford and Mary Brewster. You'll be transported over the Atlantic and hear my experiences, a sculptor based in the Midlands, and my diary written during my time aboard a modern-day cargo ship, and Mary Brewster, wife of William Brewster, one of only 19 women who made the perilous journey. Mary shares with us her letters to her two daughters, Patience and Fear, who stayed behind in Leiden and didn't join their parents until 1621 and 1623 respectively. The stories of two pilgrim women separated by 400 years are supported on their journeys by stories from fellow pilgrim William Bradford, voiced by Wyn Pritchard. You are invited to share the Mayflower experience of these women on two very contrasting journeys of a lifetime. Sunday, 28th of July. Today was supposed to be the sailing day, but the ship, Atlantic Sea, has been delayed. Bonus, I got to spend another day at home yesterday, which was really nice. Set off at 9:30 a.m. this morning, after hugging everyone. I felt like crying, but put a brave face on. I hope I'm doing the right thing. Travelled through a lot of rain, making our way towards Southport via the Peak District. Cat and Fiddle Road had very poor visibility and was very wet. Made it to the hotel for 2:30, checked in and looked at emails. Still no boarding pass for the ship or a timetable. Talk about last minute. Not like I booked the passage in January. Oh wait, I did. Took a walk with Dad down the pier, which was very blustery. The sea was out, showing vast mudflats and seagrass. I could just about see Liverpool to the left and Blackpool to the right. Went into the Victorian Penny Arcade, swapped £1 for some old pennies, and played a few games, and had my future told by Zoltar, who told me to follow my heart. Don't let fear stop you from doing what you want to do. Got the sailing times. It will dock at 8 p.m. tonight and depart at 7:30 p.m. Monday. They've estimated a much shorter sailing time of only 7 days. Let's hope for some good weather. Still, no boarding ticket.
It is not with us as with other men, whom small things can discourage, or small discontentments cause to wish themselves home again.
Monday, 29th of July. Had a good night's sleep, a comfy bed and tasty breakfast. Still no ticket. Heading off to the ship. I hope I can board without one. Almost at the ship and made a little stop off at Crosby Beach, Sefton, to see, very quickly I might add, the Anthony Gormley sculptures, Another Place. Dad and I had just a few minutes to see 2 out of the 100 cast iron figures that spread out along the 3 kilometres of the shore. I can see the docks up ahead. Travelled to the port of Liverpool and stopped at the logistics building, which is as far as we could go. Said bye to Dad and met a fellow traveller, photographer Ivan Perez Lopez from Spain. We handed over our passports and waited for further instructions. Still no ticket. After a long wait, a minibus arrived to take us to the dock holding the ship Atlantic Sea. It is massive. We entered the bowels of the ship, which stretched for such a long way. Another passport check. I was asked to show my ticket, and I explained I didn't have one. Luckily, they let me continue. After walking the length of the ship, up many floors, round corridors, through lots of doors with high steps, we got to the cabins. They thought Ivan and I were a couple after showing us his cabin only. Mistake cleared up. I have my own room with a bunk, wardrobe and desk. The wet room is up a large step and seems okay. Still no ticket. The safety talk was interesting. I have a cold water suit that I have to practice getting into and a life jacket complete with light and whistle. They explained the cold North Atlantic Sea can kill you, so try on the suit and check it fits. Lunch was a tiny salad. I could not eat the pasta or soup. I explained what vegan means. Hopefully dinner will be okay. Ticket finally arrived. I've explored a little of the decks, both port side, which is my room's vicinity, and starboard. The boat is being loaded with a great many containers. I made a little movie, managed to edit it and upload it before it was time to go to the mess for dinner at 5:30 p.m. I sat with Ivan and a retired couple from Doncaster of all places. I explained I was doing a Mayflower project. Oh yes, they said. We live near Austerfield and know all about that. Dinner was nice. They remembered I didn't eat meat, dairy and eggs, and I had boiled potatoes like all the others, but instead of a meaty stew, they made me a veggie stew. It had a strange but pleasant enough flavour, completed by another side salad with fruit for pudding. I also sat next to two Italians, a young man who ignored everyone and an older man who shook everyone's hand and smiled. Apparently there are a few more passengers, an American lady and a few Germans, but I'm yet to meet them. The captain came over to address us all. He explained there was still more cargo to load and we leave on the next high tide at 8 a.m. tomorrow. We were supposed to sail Saturday. That got pushed to Sunday, which was pushed to Monday. Now we leave Tuesday. The captain said we would still be able to make the original landing date of Monday the 5th of August, even with all these delays. He must be planning to travel at full speed. There's no bar either. Apparently you can get a drink with your meal once at sea. I found 2 mini bottles of red wine in a cupboard in my cabin. Not a drink I like, but may open if required. Found a touching passage about the Pilgrims in July preparing to leave Leiden on board the Speedwell.
They went aboard and their friends with them, where truly doleful was the sight of that sad and mournful parting, to see what sighs and sobs and prayers did sound amongst them, what tears did gush from every eye, and pithy speeches pierced each heart.
I've had a final phone call with my family, and I won't hear their voices again for another week. It feels like such a long time to me, but to the Pilgrims, in some cases, it was forever. My total time away will be just over 4 weeks, the longest time I've ever been apart from my family. I hope I can manage this. Good night. Tuesday, 30th of July, 5:45 a.m. Awake. I slept okay, regardless of the wooden-like mattress. So hard it makes your bones hurt if you stay in one position long enough. Today's the sailing day, sunny with a very light breeze. 7 a.m. Washed, dressed and off to walk the decks. Breakfast. I have eaten a slice of toast. The waiter told me not to eat any more and gave me a different slice. I may have eaten a type of bread containing milk. I hope I'm not ill later. According to John from Doncaster, we are now taking an alternative route past the Isle of Man, Northern Ireland, Mull, Iceland, Grand Banks, Newfoundland, Halifax. Sounds exciting. 10 a.m. We have been moving very slowly for 2 hours now, and we're still not out of the port. The boat has turned a very tight turn with the help of the little tugboats. There was lots of other boats to get past, and they did so well to turn such a big boat. 11 a.m. Feeling a little unwell, drinking lots of peppermint tea to help relieve the feeling. We are moving now towards the sea, going slowly past Liverpool. The cadets took us on a familiarisation tour to show us the different routes to the various lifeboat stations. I hope we don't need to use them. It's 7:30 p.m. now, and what was a sunny day has suddenly changed. All through dinner we got glimpses of Northern Ireland to the left and Scotland to the right. I put on my raincoat to walk the decks, and it was so windy it was hard to close the doors. I remembered the safety talk about keeping fingers away from the door edges, as it could sever fingers in windy conditions, and I held tightly to the handles. I made it from port to bow and then starboard deck to take in the last views of the British Isles. It suddenly worsened, and I could not approach the bow anymore for fear of being blown around or not being able to open the doors. I'm back inside, looking at the rain and wind, and very surprised that the ship doesn't seem to be affected, but just a gentle, constant vibration of the engines. Looking over my weaving, which has not gone very well, I have some sketches of local lace that I made at the Industrial Museum in Nottingham. I've tried to translate it into a macrame piece, with very little success. I've been reading about the delays that the Pilgrims faced after leaving Leiden in July on board the Speedwell. They joined the Mayflower, and the two ships left Southampton, only to discover that the Speedwell was as open and leaky as a sieve. The ships returned to port in Dartmouth for repairs and set off once more in mid-August. After 200 miles, yet more leaks from the Speedwell, so back to port again, this time in Plymouth. Finally, they set sail once more, but with everyone who wanted to continue aboard the one vessel, the Mayflower, on the 6th of September 1620. I'm so glad that my delays have not been as problematic as the ones encountered by the travellers 400 years ago. I will continue to read Nathaniel Philbrick's book, Mayflower, A Voyage to War, and my copy of Mort's Relation, a journal of the Pilgrims at Plymouth, to see what happens next. Wednesday, 31st of July. Last night the captain explained that we changed the clocks throughout the journey as we move through different time zones. At 2200 hours, we turned back the clocks 1 hour. As I'd awoken very early yesterday, I thought I may sleep to a good hour, but awoke at 4 a.m, then 5 a.m, then at 6 a.m. I did get to see the sunrise, however, which was lovely, but by 5 a.m. it was thick cloud. 7 a.m. I went to walk the decks for some fresh air with my rain mac on as a windbreak. It was blustery but not dangerous like last night. I managed to get all the way around the deck. I saw a rainbow forming that seemed to be right in front of me, but was too faint to capture on film. It could have just been fine spray from the movement of the bow of the ship travelling through the water. 9 a.m. Just back from breakfast. Pineapple juice, fresh coffee, and 2 slices of toast. About 5-inch square of an unknown bread type, always served to me with sliced cucumber and tomatoes. Every one of the passengers seemed to now sit in the same places, according to language. Out of the 2 Italian men, only Cesar, the older man, attempts to converse with anyone. We've had a few broken conversations in English. I can't remember any of the Italian I learnt for our trip to Rome a few years ago. It feels quite embarrassing that the mixture of people on board the ship, both crew and passengers, all have multiple language skills, and I have none. Interestingly, the ship Atlantic Sea has a similar sized crew as the Mayflower, of around 20 to 30 men. Just the passenger size is smaller. There's 10 of us compared to 102 Mayflower travellers. John, our direct line with the bridge, says they are sending up a weather balloon at 10:30. I mustn't miss that. I saw the balloon being filled with helium to approximately 100 centimetre diameter and then fitted with a range of sensors. It didn't take long to disappear into the upper atmosphere. I stayed on top deck for a while, enjoying the sun and shelter of the windbreak, and had a lovely chat with Cesar. Later I worked on the macrame I had started yesterday and fell out with it. I think I understand where I've gone wrong. Lunch was interesting. Side salad, soup, followed by a plate full of potatoes and green beans fried with onion. It tasted fine washed down with a cold beer. I don't think I'll be getting scurvy anytime soon. Sandy spotted dolphins off the bow. I was reading about the Mayflower passengers who were reliant on their barrels of beer and water supplies to provide good, clean drinks. But towards the end of the 66-day voyage, they were getting to the slightly slimy bottom of the water barrel. After lunch, wearing my rainmac and holding my camera, I went dolphin watching. Didn't see any. How disappointing. Must get back to work on my macrame now. Hopefully I'll get to see one later. Worked on my macrame this afternoon and got so comfortable I nodded off. I think I must have slept for roughly 30 minutes, and when I awoke, I was still holding my pattern book. I felt very groggy, so off for another walk around the deck. Watched the afternoon balloon being filled and released, and starting to feel a bit more awake now. Dinner was a side of shredded red cabbage and grated carrot that had been marinated in something. Mains was potato with carrot and white cabbage. I hope the cook gets a little more adventurous tomorrow. I'm fed up of potatoes and veg. I did joke, however, that before I left, that I could end up living on potato for the whole voyage. Captain announced another clock change tonight, back 1 hour at 2200. Went for an evening stroll and saw the sun setting briefly through a small break in the clouds. The sea is a little rougher, but somehow, even though the ship is rising and falling with the swell, you don't feel it so much, just the constant vibration. I must tackle this uncomfortable bed. It is so hard and lumpy. I'm beginning to ache. I tried to do some yoga earlier to relieve the aches, but it's hard to balance on a moving vessel. I mustn't complain. I have a cabin all to myself and a small bathroom, much more than the Pilgrims who lived and slept between decks in cramped conditions. Not sure what they did for a bathroom.
The Mayflower, 7th of September 1620, first full day at sea. My dearest Patience, it seems so long since our tearful parting in Leiden, yet I am excited to report that we have finally sailed out into the vast open sea. You recall that we had 2 false starts already. We had to turn back because our ship, the Speedwell, sprung a leak. The rumour was that the crew were reluctant to make the crossing, so they deliberately holed the ship. Anyway, despite the repairs at Dartmouth, she started leaking again just past Land's End. So we returned to Plymouth, and those of us still with heart for the voyage gathered on this ship, the Mayflower. I have to say that being a cargo ship, she seems most unsuitable for the journey ahead, and woefully inadequate for the number of passengers crowded on board. Yet we must not complain, as this is the Lord's mission. Just yesterday he set us on our way, so, as I always say, we must trust in the Lord. I hope you can read this writing. I'm sorry it's so awful. It is a rocky hand indeed. There is much rolling and movement, even though the sea is quite calm today. So, the bad news is that our leader, Robert Cushman, became too ill to travel, so he has reluctantly stayed in Plymouth. He entrusted our community of pilgrims to your father's guidance, saying, "William, I am sick and weak. I fear I will not make this journey to the New World. But you and Mary are strong and faithful. You must carry my dreams with you across the ocean. I will remain here and pray for your safe passage, and that, if it be God's will, I may be healed enough to join you in due time." Of course, there was never any question about it. Your father vowed to do his bidding, having sought the encouragement and support of his dear friend William Bradford, who surely has a very wise head on him for his 30 years on earth. We are so tired of hiding and looking over our shoulders for the King's men that the lure of a new start with religious freedom in a just land is both our escape and our life's purpose. We have uprooted ourselves, our families, and our whole faith community before across a small sea to Holland, and now we must do it again across a mighty and fearsome ocean. Oh, Patience, how I wish that you, Jonathan, and Fear were travelling with us. My delight at escaping England cannot begin to extinguish the ache in my heart at leaving my 3 beloved eldest children behind. I trust in the Lord that all goes well with you. William Bradford's young wife, poor Dorothy, is filled with sadness. She weeps so for her little son John, who remains with you in Leiden. I hope he is not pining too much for his mother. She is in such a state that I fear for her spirit. I am fortunate to have the great comfort of my 2 smallest lads with me. Love is his usual inquisitive self, and, even in the crowded confinement below deck, will escape my watching any time he can. Young Wrestling is suffering from the seasickness very badly, and, of course, I also have the care of the youngest 2 abandoned Moor children. I think I will ask Dorothy Bradford to assist me with them, as it may distract her from her sadness. As Richard Moore and his sister Mary are near to Wrestling's age, I hope that they will find some company and amusement together when Wrestling is feeling a little better. Your brother, Love, being a big boy of 9 and almost a man in his own eyes, will have nothing to do with the little ones, who are just babes to him. Wrestling is not alone in suffering with the seasickness. I slept all right last night, but this morning, as soon as I put my feet to the ground, oh dear, I felt rotten. Many others have the sickness too. The crew care not 2 hoots about us, and one awful young man torments us all the time. He has a cocky swagger and a roving eye, which keeps resting on pretty young Priscilla Mullins. I'm far from certain that she resents the attention, but he is a rough fellow and no suitable match for a faithful, God-fearing girl like her. Your father is hale and well as always. He is in good spirits, and his faith and ideals prove an inspiration to the other passengers, some of whom, despite escaping trouble back in England, are very fearful of the journey and what lies beyond. William is a good man, with the strongest passion for the Lord. I knew when we first met that life with him would be an adventure, and it certainly has not been easy. But our purpose has always been clear, and we stand together in all matters. As you know, these last few months, with your father away from us and in hiding, have been so hard for us all to bear. You can imagine how my heart leapt with delight when he and the others slipped on board the Speedwell at Southampton in the dead of night. The joy of being reunited at last! Although this journey may be hard and long, we know that it is the Lord's will, and that he has all things in hand. Oh, Patience, I love your father now as I loved him from the day we first met, even though we have been married almost 30 years. When we had to be apart, we were always together in spirit, and it is indeed wonderful to be embarking on this journey together. Our time in Leiden seems but a distant memory now. I cannot bear to be so far away from you all, with no prospect of when we might be reunited. I must be strong and wait for the glorious day when you can travel with your brother and sister to join us. I hope and pray that you will keep safe until we can meet again. With very much love to all, Mother. P.S. Trust in the Lord